Okay, so ready to dive into something we all crave. Strong relationships. And I'm not talking like surface level advice here. This deep dive, it's about how those connections, they really impact your well-being. Like big time.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in, individual wellness and all that.
Yeah.
But our relationships, they're crucial. Not just a nice to have, they're like deeply intertwined with how happy we are overall.
Totally. And we've got some, I gotta say, fascinating research lined up about like the 6 key ingredients for successful relationships. And these aren't just, abstract ideas. They're like actionable things you can actually use.
Yeah, and what's so interesting is it's stuff we might already know, but this research, it digs into the why, like why these things matter and how much they actually impact us.
Exactly. So first up, communication. And I know, everyone's probably heard enough lectures on communication, right?
It's a classic.
But this source, it goes beyond the usual talk more stuff. They made this point about active listening. And honestly, it kind of made me realize I'm guilty of this too sometimes, like just pretending to listen,
Oh, yeah.
Because you're so busy thinking of solutions, you're not really hearing what the person's actually saying.
It's so common. We want to be helpful, so we jump right into problem-solving mode.
Right, exactly.
But this research, it highlights how powerful it is to just, reflect back what you've heard.
Okay.
Focusing on their experience, not jumping in with your own interpretation right away.
So instead of, oh, you should totally do this, it's more like, okay, I hear you saying this is tough, you're feeling frustrated, just like validating their experience.
Exactly. And the research showed when couples actually practiced this kind of listening, reflective listening, it had a huge impact. Like it created this feeling of being truly seen.
Right.
Which, I mean, come on, that's essential for any relationship to actually work.
Totally. When you feel heard, you're way more likely to open up, be vulnerable. It builds that foundation of trust, right?
And speaking of trust, this source had this line that really stuck with me. Trust is like a mirror. Easy to crack, hard to put back together.
Ooh, that's good. And they weren't just talking about, like, the big betrayals, right?
Right.
They made this distinction between, like, fidelity, faithfulness, and this bigger idea of reliability.
Yeah, because infidelity, obviously, that's huge, devastating. But even the smaller stuff, day-to-day stuff, like always being late, breaking promises.
Little things add up.
They erode trust over time,
It's like that saying, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice.
Exactly.
Like, you might forgive it, but it still makes you wonder, can I really rely on this person?
And the source emphasized rebuilding trust.
Yeah.
Not about these big, grand gestures. It's about consistently showing up reliably, even in the small stuff.
It's like personal growth, right?
Yeah.
Not about overnight changes. It's the small stuff you do consistently.
Exactly.
Okay, this is already giving me a lot to think about. So communication, trust, what's next on the list for like relationship wellness?
Let's talk about respect. Might sound basic, but this source really made me think about it differently.
Okay, how so?
They frame respect as valuing boundaries.
Ooh, boundaries. Now you're speaking my language. This is something personally I've had to work on because I'm such a helper,
Right.
Like my instinct is to jump in and fix things, even when it's really not my place.
So many of us do that.
Right.
But the source highlights how crucial it is to respect boundaries, even when it's hard. Because it's about that balance, individuality, and togetherness.
Right.
You can be super close to someone, and still they need their space,
Yeah.
to figure things out on their own.
That's actually really helpful because I think sometimes I worry that if I'm not constantly doing things for my partner, it means I care less. But this is like sometimes the most loving thing is giving them space.
Absolutely. And it goes back to the listening thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes respecting a boundary is taking action, holding back that advice, and instead just being there, listening without judgment.
Okay, I love that. Respecting boundaries, it's not passive. It's choosing to show up in a way that honors what they need, sometimes stepping back, sometimes stepping up in a different way.
Exactly. And they had this great example about respecting someone's time. Even if you just have a quick question, being mindful if they're in the middle of something, it shows you value their time.
It's like pausing for 5 seconds before interrupting someone who's clearly in a zone could prevent like a whole argument later.
And you know what? That plays into our listeners, they love efficiency.
Yeah.
Right? Small acts of respect, they prevent big blow-ups later. It's smoother, more harmonious overall.
Okay, I'm on board with this whole respect thing. Small acts, big payoffs. Now, the next ingredient in this relationship recipe, this one always gets people talking.
Yeah.
Shared goals.
Shared goals sounds great on paper,
All right.
but In reality,
Uh,
tricky, right? This means you got to be joined at the hip, same dreams,
yeah.
all that. This research, it gets into all that.
Okay, good. Because I was just thinking, what if my partner and I, we have different passions, different paths we want to be on? Are we just like doomed?
Not necessarily. See, they make this point. It's not about having the exact same goals. It's more about like shared values.
Okay. So it's the why behind the what, not just the what.
Yes. Like two people could have totally different careers.
Right.
Right. But if they share values, ambition, supporting each other's growth, that's huge.
Makes sense.
They actually tell this story.
Yeah.
This couple, they started out, their big goal was to travel the world together.
Ooh, nice.
Right. But then life happens. One of them gets this amazing job offer.
Okay, that's a tough one. Travel the world or a dream job. That could go either way.
Totally. But here's the thing. Even though their goal changed, their values still lined up. Ambition, supporting each other, building a future together. Those values, it's like they acted as their compass, even when their individual paths, went a little different ways.
So it's less about clinging to one plan, more about like we're both heading in a direction that feels meaningful, even if the meaningful part changes a bit along the way.
Exactly. And you know what I found so interesting? The research, it linked this back to something a lot of us crave in relationships, that feeling of being on the same team. We're so used to individual achievement, but when you have those shared values, it's like, okay, we're in this together. Different routes maybe, but we're both climbing the same mountain.
I love that. So we've got communication, trust, respect, shared goals. What's up next on this like relationship wellness journey we're on?
Get ready for this one. Intimacy.
Okay. Knew we couldn't have a relationship deep dive without it.
Of course.
Yeah.
But we're going deeper here. The source, they said something really interesting. Physical intimacy. Important, yes, but emotional intimacy, more important.
That's interesting because like we're kind of taught that physical intimacy, that's like the ultimate closeness, but they're saying emotional intimacy is actually the foundation.
Exactly. And think about it. Without that emotional intimacy, that feeling of really connecting, feeling safe, accepted, physical intimacy can feel kind of empty.
Yeah, like the difference between a roommate and a soulmate. You might share a living space, but you share your heart with the other.
Yes. Love that analogy. And it's like how we approach information even. You, listening to this, you're choosing to go deep, exploring these ideas. And emotional intimacy, that's what it's all about. Not just surface level, but being vulnerable, letting someone really see you.
And isn't that where the real connection happens? When you can be yourself, even the messy parts, and still feel loved?
Absolutely. And being that vulnerable, it can be scary. But the rewards, immense. It's like finding that safe harbor in another person, that feeling of truly being known.
Okay, that was beautifully said. But before we get too serious, this next ingredient, it reminds us that relationships are supposed to be fun too.
Right. All this deep connection is great, but gotta have some playfulness.
Yes. They actually said laughter is medicine. And you know what? I've totally experienced that.
Tell me about it.
Okay, so picture this. My partner and I, we were having this like ridiculously stupid argument, and I mean stupid, about like a misplaced TV remote and the right way to load the dishwasher.
Okay, I'm already laughing. We've all been there. Those dumb little arguments that get blown out of proportion.
Exactly. We're both getting all worked up, right? And then out of nowhere, my partner just bursts out laughing, like full-on belly laughter. And the absurdity of it just hit me too, and I started laughing.
Shared laughter, the best. It's like a reset button for your brain.
It really is. All that tension just gone.
Yeah.
And then we could actually talk about what was bothering us, but, without all the drama.
The source talked about this, how playfulness actually reduces stress.
Which makes sense, right? We laugh, especially together. Our brains release those endorphins, good mood stuff. It's like a biological bonding thing. Right. There's nothing like laughing with someone you love. It just brings you closer. It's so easy to get caught up in the seriousness of life and forget to have some fun.
And that's where I think their point about fond memories, it's huge. We're so busy with productivity and all that, we forget that joy is productive too, especially in relationships. Those little moments, the laughter, the fun, they become the stories we tell, the glue that holds us together.
I'm seeing a theme here. It's not about some big, complicated thing. It's the small choices we make every day.
You got it. And this isn't just about knowing this stuff. It's about doing something. So as we head into the last part of this deep dive, I want to leave you with this. If you could pick just one ingredient to focus on this week, one small thing to try, what would it be?
Good question. And don't overthink it. It doesn't have to be huge. Like maybe this week, you commit to. Maybe this week you commit to like actually putting your phone down when your partner, a friend, whoever's talking to you, just that, being present. Speaks volumes,
It really does. It's those little moments. They seem small, but that's where the connection is. And the best part, you start making those little changes, it kind of snowballs. Like you put your phone down, you have a better conversation, more trust. Suddenly you're communicating totally differently.
Like we were saying, small steps, big changes, it all goes back to being intentional, right? Not just going through the motions, but like actively choosing to be present in your relationships.
Yes. Creating something that actually fulfills you, supports you, where you feel like, okay, I'm seen here.
Absolutely. And the best part is it doesn't have to be this big, complicated thing. It's taking what we talked about and just weaving it into your everyday life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this week, remember these ingredients, right? Which one speaks to you? And challenge yourself just one small way to bring it to life.
Because even small changes, they can shift the whole dynamic. And who knows, you might surprise yourself with like how much those little acts of connection, kindness, they really add up.
Food for thought, right?
Yeah,
Hopefully this got you thinking about your own relationships and maybe even inspired you to try something new this week.
totally. Until next time, everybody.